Okay, great. All right, so we have today Reb Yochanan from Emuna.com, particularly es.emuna.com, the Spanish version of that website. Tell us about what you do and who you are.
Basically, I've been doing videos in Spanish, although I began doing videos in English just recently for the Spanish world, teaching them the teachings of Rabbi Nachman, specifically on finding the purpose of creation. It's a very important situation that I've been observing for many years, that people are walking around wasting a lot of money, a lot of time, lost without a purpose. And they think maybe just being religious is the purpose, but many times it's not. Sometimes you need to find what the reason of the creation is. So, Baruch Hashem, I've been involved with Rav Moshe Kasuto, and also I've been working with Jews for Judaism, with specifically Rabbi Michael Skobach, Baruch Hashem.
For those who don't know, Rabbi Kasuto is Rabbi Dror, right? The famous Rabbi
Yes.
Dror? Okay.
That's correct. That's right.
You subscribe to Breslov. You're a Breslover
Yes,
Chassid?
I do. I'd like to be a Breslov Chassid. The idea behind it is an incredible idea, full of a spirit, so to speak. So I like to think that B'ezrat Hashem one day I get to be one. It's very demanding and it's beautiful. So B'ezrat Hashem one day I get to be one. The samples that I have, like Rav Dror or Rabbi Levi, I'm still far away, but I'm trying anyway. For those who don't know, Rabbi Nachman, obviously was Ashkenaz. I happen to be Sephardic, and within Breslov is just a way of living, and not necessarily a nusach, a tradition. So the person can be Jews from Ethiopia, they can be Sephardi, they can be Ashkenaz, they can be all kinds, and they can learn from Rabbi Nachman. And the teachings of Rabbi Nachman, in a nutshell, is to serve Hashem with joy, to find the good points and to serve Hashem with joy. And again, my take is to find the purpose of your creation, the reason why you were created, to find and to utilize the gifts that you've been given, the views that you've been given, and B'ezrat Hashem, connect them to the purpose of creation and work with those things, which will make you eventually a very happy person. It will get you to places that you can only dream of, because when you're working with creation, things work. And that's basically the idea that I'm trying to bring out, and the idea that Rabbi Nachman brings.
Mm-hmm. Breslov is not that popular in North America, but it's growing. It's very popular in Israel. And
Yes.
I remember I spent a lot of time in Sfat, and there's a lot of Sfardim. I mean, many Sfardim become, I think, Breslov over Chabad for some reason. But
Yeah.
Chabad is also a movement based off of people from other traditions. It's widely held that one has to follow the tradition of their parents. If that was the case, Chabad wouldn't exist, Breslov wouldn't exist. Would you consider yourself...
Well, just to make sure, when I daven, and let's say when you're a Newman or you're in a Breslov shul, we follow the nusach of the shul. So, for example, here in Toronto, there is a Breslov center that is Sephardic Moroccan. That's where I used to go to, and we follow the nusach, Moroccan nusach, which with Rabbi Nachman in it, but is Sephardic to the core. And when you're a Newman, also there is Sephardi, Ashkenazi shuls. You can go to daven in your own tradition, but with Rabbi Nachman, which is, again, the idea of joy, the idea to speaking to Hashem and to connect, and the way that Hashem connects with you.
Mm-hmm. Now, within Breslov, there are different segments that most people don't know about, especially in America. But would you subscribe to the Nanach ideology?
No. One thing that I had to work in my head, and I'm sure every one of us do, is I not necessarily like certain Jewish groups. I don't necessarily subscribe, better said, to different ideas from different groups, but every one of them happen to have an iyun, a good point that those people need to have. So I'm not a Nanach. Nanach has those people who are dancing on the street with a white kippah. I don't do it. Although I like to play loud music, and I do, and I like to dance, but I don't do the shtick. And I like to be happy, but I wouldn't say that I'm a Nanach. I happen to be, let's say, Rav Dror or the rabbis I learned here in Toronto. They are very studious, although Nanach is also very studious. but Nanach and more, so to speak, into to the joy, even more so, where the group I belong to, they're more into, like, again, what Rabbi Nachman said, halacha, you must. And so you learn halacha, an hour a day. You learn, it's a very studious movement. It's not empty-handed for sure.
Is Rav Dror a Nanach?
No, it's not. No.
How about Rabbi Brody?
No, none of them. Rabbi Shalom Arush is not a Nanach. None of them are Nanach. I don't know. To tell the truth, I don't know rabbis who are Nanach in the movement. I know Rabbi Shalom Sabag. He's not a Nanach, although he's very happy. I guess Rabbi Saba was a Nanach, but I don't have contact with those people on that group because I just don't happen to have contact, not because I don't like them.
Right. Now, to give a little history on this, the reason we call it Nanach is because Breslov, there's a saying within it of Nana Nachman Nachman Meuman. And there was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Yisrael Dov Odesser. Is that who you call Saba?
Yes.
He has the whole ordeal of the Petek, the letter
yes.
that he found from heaven that he believed that was written by Rabbi Nachman himself, who taught that anyone who constantly says Nana Nachman Nachman Meuman will find redemption, will find joy, will find success, all of the above in this world. In Israel, we see it spray painted all over the place. But I think, like any movement, it's usually those who are less educated, those who are just finding an excuse to party, who join these groups. I mean, a lot of them smoke weed and do a lot of things that the rabbis don't approve of. But I guess, I don't know if it's better for them to do that or become one of the artzim, like one of the chilonim on the streets of Ben Yehuda. So they drive around in vans with a platform on top and they're dancing. But everybody hops into dancing. So only because you see people dancing with a bunch of nanachs, and they have even a sign that they throw out to show that they're nanachs. But doesn't mean they're actual nanachs. In other words, only because you're I mean, I've danced with them.
Yeah, I dance with them too. So it's not a... Look, every one of us have a different need spiritually. And Baruch Hashem, like you said, there's some people who, if they didn't have that, they will be completely secular, away from Hashem. And so maybe this is also good for them. You know, you have your stick, I got my stick, every one of us, Baruch Hashem. But as long as we get to see the light of Hashem in our lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. Who is your audience in particular? Like South American Jews or people coming to Judaism in Spanish countries?
Okay, so in Spanish we say Raimundo y Medio Mundo, everyone in between. So obviously the message of Rabbi Nachman is to Jews first and foremost, but also to the world. There's a saying that the fire of the teachers of Rabbi Nachman will burn into the coming of the Mashiach, and eventually all the world will know Hashem. So eventually it's to everyone, but everybody who's looking for Hashem with truth. Those people who are seriously looking for Hashem. And as you know, there is a revival in Latin America, people giving up idolatry, looking for real for Hashem. And we are there always at first for the Jewish people, and then also for them, because they need to find out how to serve Hashem properly and not with idolatry. And at the same time, there is hundreds and thousands of people who are giving up idolatry, who need to know what does it mean to be a worshiper of Hashem without idolatry. So we're trying to give a light to every one of those people. So that, I guess, it goes back to the same saying, to Raimundo y Medio Mundo, to everybody else in between.
Do you guys have Breslov centers in Spanish countries?
There is a few. Sad enough, as you know, in Latin America, a lot of the Jewish centers are clubs. Only certain people can go. So, Bezat Hashem, as the Geula, as the time of the revelation comes closer, people will become more open-minded and open up the doors to these centers. So there is one Emunah center in Colombia that I'm aware of. There is a few groups in Latin America from different shuls who learn from us, and I guess even though they're not Emunah centers, the people will be welcome. Like in El Salvador, there's a Jewish organization, Orthodox Jewish organization, that is open to people to come in and to learn. So it's happening little by little.
So these organizations, in Latin countries, anyone can come and learn Torah, or you have to be on the list?
Look, in Latin America, again, most of the shuls, most of the synagogues are clubs. You have to have a name. People need to know you. You need to bring a letter of recommendation. I don't know if a DNA test is required. Sometimes even, I've been making, you can see, you can imagine my smile on my face, but it almost sounds true. So that's a little problematic, and Bezat Hashem, things will change again. So what we're recommending
No, but is
to Jewish people,
Breslov making an effort to change things?
yes, look, it is changing, but we don't have many Muna centers or groups in Latin America. So we are encouraging synagogues to open the doors to Jews who want to return, and they're looking for a place for themselves. So I know people in Colombia, I know people in Argentina, I know people in Mexico who were secular Jews who decide to take on mitzvot and the ways of Hashem because
I'm speaking about Gentiles in particular. If
they
my
have
audience
to,
in Colombia, if I tell
yeah.
them go to your local Amuna Center to learn Torah, would they be welcomed in? If they have no ethnic Jewish pedigree?
You know what? I don't know that. That's a good question. I don't know in Colombia if they do that, to tell you the truth. I don't talk to the people in Colombia specifically on that. I know I have groups, and we talked about Rabbi Yochanan, who's very open to help people. So I'm sure he will be on board, but I don't know Breslov groups. We haven't done that. I'm trying to, but it has been very difficult for non-Jews who are trying to look for Hashem. For now, I told them to make groups and try to at least gather together. You can imagine a future problem that children or all these people who were maybe evangelical Christians, messianics, who gave up idolatry, Baruch Hashem, and now they're looking to connect to Hashem, and there is no shul that will welcome them. And some of them are single, some of them want children, some of them want to get married, they were religious, even if they have not a non-kosher religious idea. And we're trying to guide them to open groups and hopefully marry within each other and at least have some kind of a congregation where they can celebrate their celebrations together. It's a little problematic, but B'ezrat Hashem, things as they progress, we're going to be able to solve them. But we're looking for solutions. For sure, we're looking for solutions.
I had contact with the Rosh Yeshiva of the Breslov Yeshiva in the Old City, and he told me straight out that he has no problem with encouraging people to become Jewish and accepting converts. But it seems like, at least in South America, Breslov is just becoming another Chabad. In other words, it's by Jews for Jews, which gets most of these people from South America lying and saying that they have Jewish ancestry just to be let into the synagogue. I mean, it'd be nice if Breslov kind of stuck their neck out a little more and said, you know what, we're going to welcome anyone who wants to learn Torah. And that's one thing I respected about Breslov, because Rabbi Nachum has more of this Torah is for everybody approach versus Chabad that emphasizes the Jewish soul too much, in my opinion.
Look, we want to welcome everybody, but we don't have the resources to do that. And we thought about it, but really, I don't travel to Latin America too often. I try to work with some people. Again, the people in El Salvador, they want to do that. They do that, and I like to think a little bit through my help that they open up the doors a little bit more. And I try to do that in other places, and I don't want to say names and places, but some of them, they close the doors, and you cannot help it very much, and B'ezrat Hashem, if anything, if we can help, if we can open, we open. If we can influence, we influence. And like you said, people who want to do conversion, and look, just last week there was an article by a rabbi, what's his name, who published that there is 30 million possible descendants of Jews in Latin America alone. It's possible. But would the Jewish community open it? I don't know. I don't think so. Would they help? And then we're trying to help as much as we can.
But in your opinion, in the opinion of Reb Yochanan, if it was up to you, if they made you the rabbi of the world, would you force all these synagogues that close their doors on Spanish converts in Latin America, would you force them to open their doors up and welcome anyone who wants to convert and put them on a path to conversion?
I will tell you from this perspective, which I thought about it for a long time ago. When I was a kid, I had the privilege to belong to a Casa España, which is a very clubbish club in Latin America of people who are descendants with papers from Spain. And it's very neat and very privileged. And I felt bad sometimes for people who didn't have that situation. And I was a privileged kid, Baruch Hashem. So I was able to join that. Today, most synagogues are like Casa España. They're clubs. If it was up to me, I would encourage them to open the doors to those people who are sincerely looking for conversion. However, and this is a big thing because, and probably it's also for your experience, a lot of people want conversion, but a lot of people don't want to pay the price to be converts. Meaning, they think that because one day they woke up and they felt Jewish, that people should open the door. But they're really not willing to do mitzvot. They're really not willing to keep Shabbat, for example, or to eat kosher. They're looking for loopholes. They're not really willing to move to a place where there is a synagogue close by. Somehow they want the Jewish community. They want the Jewish community to move to their neighborhood. You know what I mean? So
isn't this identical? Isn't this identical to somebody being born ethnically Jewish and then demanding special treatment or demanding to be led into the Jewish people? Because the example you gave of someone just waking up one morning and thinking that they're Jewish and expecting special treatment, I mean, that's identical to someone actually being born Jewish, which, I mean, at least according to halakha, I mean, someone who's mechalel Shabbat, I mean, someone who basically spits on the mitzvot and happens to have Jewish parents is equivalent to a Gentile.
Yes.
For all intents and purposes. So, like, why should you reach out to people who really don't care about Judaism, but just happen to have ethnic Jewish blood, but in some way make it difficult for someone who had the bad luck of being born to Catholic parents?
Again, since I don't run any shul whatsoever in Latin America, I wouldn't be able to answer that because I don't understand why they are so clubbish.
It's because they're racist. Same thing with these Club España. To have Spanish and conquistador blood in Spanish America is really to look down on the Indian, to say that we're better. Yeah. And mind you, where they just marry amongst themselves. And I think that's disgusting. Now, to separate people by culture, I'm all for that, right? I mean, clearly Western culture is superior to Aztec or Mayan culture, right? But to separate people by race and just because of blood and pedigree, I mean, they're amazing Indians out there, and they're garbage Westerners, and vice versa.
Yeah, but you know what? My wife is also from Latin America, and she told me that in the Jewish community she belonged to, sometimes evangelicals will come in with good intentions, I'm sure, but then after that, they will begin speaking about the El Flaco. They'll begin speaking about, whom? Yeshu. And it was very disturbing to them. So, I know in Colombia lives Rabbi Yochanan. He gives them an outline. People who want to consider to come in, he gives them an outline and a little bit of homework before they ever step on premises. So you know what? There has to be also some filtering.
But if a Jew, someone who's born ethnically Jewish, walks into a synagogue and starts speaking about Karl Marx or like pushing the ideas of Maduro, why should that be any less offensive than someone speaking about Chucho, Jesus?
I forgot that. That was a good one. I forgot that Chucho. Yeah. That's a good one. You know what? Again, because I wasn't raised in Latin America. I was raised here in Canada. I don't know much about the politics and whatnot. And I couldn't help it. Bezat Hashem, again, I'm making videos to try to convince people to open doors.
No, we're just having a philosophical discussion now. I actually think we have a lot more in common with evangelical Christians than we do with communists or atheists, even pessimistic agnostics. I mean, a Christian probably just needs a little nudge to drop JC, and you've just made a Jew for life, a Torah-keeping Jew for life, because there's laws and norms within Christianity and even Islam which are based off of Judaism. So it seems that we really should be closing the door for people just because their mother happens to be Jewish. And with the idea that when this law was developed is that the mother was also religious. But now it's like whether she's religious or not, you're welcome in the club. And
again, since I'm not from those countries and I'm not there to be able to help them, I cannot help them.
No, but it happens in Canada also. And it happens here in Miami.
Believe it or not, in Canada, it never happens like that. In Canada, any person who wants to conversion, they can just walk into any synagogue. Obviously, we have to filter them, and I happen to be the filter here in Toronto for the Beis Din. We send them to a Beis Din. They get an interview. If they happen to be, they have certain inclinations, religious-wise. We send them, first they get to meet me, and they get to meet Rabbi Michael Skobach from Jews for Judaism. We find out where they are, and then we help them. And Canada is different. That's so different that I never, since I never I never lived in the States. I never lived a Jewish life in Latin America. There was no living Judaism where I'm from. Then I never had that. But in Canada, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can come in, so to speak, to any shul and look for conversion, and that's it. End of the story. It's actually very different in Canada than in my experience, even in Israel. You walk into any shul on the street, and they, Minyan, come in, you daven.
No, they assume you're Jewish, right? Or at least ethnically Jewish. But in Canada, there's no discouraging being done. I mean, I can't speak for Rabbi Skobach, but you guys don't offer them the Noahide laws and say, why would you want to become Jewish? Or in your opinion?
Again, since not everyone, look, in my personal experience, which is very disappointing sometimes, and I'm sure you're in the same situation. There is a guy, girl, nice person who wants to do conversion, and they really don't know what's included. And once they begin exploring what's included, they realize they're not gonna pay the price. They're not gonna eat kosher. They're not gonna keep Shabbat. And somehow they still want to be part of the club, so to speak, but they don't want to pay the fees, so to speak. You know what I mean? And
I haven't met too many people like that, by the way, especially people
I met a lot,
like from the Christian camp, people who actually live out their faith. And when I think a bigger obstacle to conversion is losing your friends and family, which they're willing to do. Yeah. Just keeping Shabbat and keeping kosher, I mean, that's like really a drop in the bucket compared to what people really give up. And if I had to put my money on anyone remaining Jewish, I'd put it with a convert, because they have more to lose. Which is why I wish Breslov would really come out as a haven for people all over the world who just want to become Jewish and learn Torah. I mean, it's really synonymous to learn.
Look, with Rav Dor, I tell you this, I'm experienced with Rav Dor. He is open to anyone. Again, with Psalm 145. Hashem is close to all those who call him, those who call him in truth. So we want the whole world to know Hashem. We say on Psalm 67, Yuducha Amim Eloki, Yuducha Amim Kulam. All people will worship together. All people will say it together. So the whole idea is we want the world to know Hashem. As we say also at the end of Isaiah, in that day, all flesh, will know Hashem. So we want that, and we work on that. And at least the Emunah group, that's our stick, to bring the knowledge of Hashem. If the person wants to be Jewish, kol hakavod. If they want to remain non-Jewish, kol hakavod. But to know Hashem is a must. To give up idolatry and to look for Hashem and to drop all kinds of shtuyot, not just idolatry, all kinds of nonsense that we all have because of family, friends, country, whatever, you name it. To drop it and to look for Hashem in sincerity, with truth, to call on Him, to have a personal relationship with Hashem. And that's the goal that I have. That's the goal I know Rav Dor, and he's the one who inspired me. I cannot speak for every group, obviously, but our goal is the whole world. Now, it's not a club, so to speak, for Judaism. It's not. It's everybody together, and everybody. I would say even to know, and Rabbi Nachman talks about this, to speak truth to Hashem. If they're non-Jews and they don't want to do conversion, all of us for them. And they want to get married, to make sure that they know that they will have to marry maybe another non-Jew. If they want to be Jews, Baruch haba, welcome. There is channels, there is way to do it. Hopefully you do it right. We don't do conversions. We don't have a Beis Din yet. We don't. So there's not a chance they do it right. And when they're done, mazel tov, and that's the end of it. That's the idea that Rav Dor gave me. That's the idea that I have. That's the work we're doing right now with Emunah, the Emunah.com, to bring the whole world to know Hashem. If there are people who want to, if there is synagogues who want to join with us on this, they're most welcome. If they want to keep closing the doors, then I cannot help it. here in Toronto, like I said, they're very open to conversion. So speaking to one of my good rabbis here, who's in charge of teaching the converts, and I remember bringing a future convert to him. He was learning Talmud. I stood in front of him, and he interrupted study, and I said to him, Geula matters, redemption matters. This man wants to do conversion, and he stopped, and he's like, talk to him, interview him right there on the spot, because every person we bring close to Hashem, whether they want to do conversion or not, they're bringing a reality of the Geula, the redemption, one step closer. If those people are putting stumbling blocks from people to know Hashem, I'm not even talking conversion, then those people are becoming a stumbling block and pushing away the redemption. True?
Oh, for sure.
What do you think?
Leaf Never. That's my whole argument. People speak about the Geula, but for some reason they don't want it to happen with people who don't have yichus, Jewish pedigree.
Even Adar Barbanel, he talks about the importance of bringing the Bnei Nusim back to the fold because they are part and parcel of the Geula. Barbanel said that, not
right.
me.
Well,
not
I disagree with that, by the way. But that someone, just because they happen to have a great-great-great-grandparent who kept Torah, should be brought close versus someone who has no Jewish pedigree. That's really...
I'm saying one day, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, look, there will be a revival of the Anusim who are going to come back, who want to come back. In Ovadia, Sefer Ovadia, it says that the descendants of Sepharad will take on the south of Israel. That's what will happen. It's prophesied.
It's problematic. I mean, I find that almost like racist to a certain extent. I mean, I think the Torah is for anyone.
The Torah is for everybody. I'm not, listen to this, the Torah is for everybody. 100% sure. But what applies to some, what is going back to the topic we're going to discuss today, is the purpose of your creation. There's people who are called to be basketball players, businessmen, rabbis, and to connect to the reason of your creation is the most important thing. And I talk to people who want to do conversion, talk to Hashem and argue with Hashem, speak to Hashem and say, he said, do you want me to be a Jew? Is that what you want from me? And if it is true, then it's convenient for my purpose in creation and convenient to you, Hashem, to allow me to become a Jew. And you speak to Hashem and you have a personal relationship with Hashem, and Hashem will open doors.
Hold on. Okay. Yeah. Keeping Torah is being elevated to the highest ethical standard and level that one could reach. This is not something that we ask God permission or advice on. In other words, clearly He wants everyone to keep Torah, particularly the ethical portions in Torah that supersede the 7 Noahide laws. So if someone's ethical, it's almost redundant to ask God, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to accept all your commandments or accept less? So if God's will is for all of humanity to keep Torah, that is synonymous, and it's really the same as becoming a member of Israel. Right?
Okay, so let me tell you why I will disagree with you a little bit. And no, I will disagree with you just a little bit on this. There is people that I met who don't want to become Jewish. They're happy being not Jewish. They worship Hashem, they look for Hashem, but they don't have any desire to become Jewish. I'm not going to tell that you must. I'm not going to become do an inquisition on them. There is people who know it's just, that's what I'm saying. That's what I mean.
It depends on what you mean by becoming Jewish. If you're telling me that you know people who have accepted the Torah as completely true, but have tossed out 80% of the ethical laws there and are just happy, and you are in some way expected to just walk by them and say, Kol hakavod, that makes no sense to me. I mean, really, but you should chastise them and say, you really believe this Torah is true and believe that 80% of it doesn't apply to you in your life because you're comfortable? Shame on you. That's what I would tell them. Becoming Jewish, from a Torah perspective, just means entering the covenant. But then Chazal, later on, the Sanhedrin, the Beis Din HaGadol, created a process to solidify that fact, which is, Korban, Tavila, and Mila. Well, Mila was from the Torah. So it's not a 2 or 3 year process as we see occurring nowadays. Back then, it was as fast as someone could return to Judaism, someone could convert to Judaism. So this idea of whether we should almost applaud a Gentile who knows the Torah is true to live like by 2% of it, and a person who happens to have a Jewish ancestry, we treat him with special care and with different standards and usher him in, would give him birthright and honors in the synagogue, seems almost primitive and archaic to me, at least ethically. I know how it's taught nowadays, but I think if any other group would propose similar ideas, they would properly be called bigoted. In other words, to assume that God expects you to be more ethical than somebody else just because of the blood running through your veins seems a little primitive. The Torah for sure doesn't lay it down like this. It seems like the Torah is there for everybody. And God, clearly tells Israel before they're anything special to him to choose life. And by not choosing life, by not choosing Torah, you'd be almost reverting back to your old ways of death, which is just remaining a Gentile. Think about it.
I get, yes. But I will say if the person is not willing to pay the price, and look, sometimes there might be a person who I got a good friend. I have a good example. I have some friends of mine, very lovely people. They lived beside a shul for years, and they were secular as you can get them. And little by little, they're taking mitzvot. We're not going to toss them out. We encourage them to take one more mitzvah and without pushing, because they might just run away. But to push our agenda, so to speak, and to make them feel bad, everybody has a pace. And Bezat Hashem, again, the whole world will come to see Hashem. Bezat Hashem, the whole world will begin accepting the mitzvot that they need to do. And that's the desire that we have for Emunah Channel. That's basically the desire. We're not saying only for Jews. We're saying to the whole world. And Bezat Hashem, the whole world will take on Hashem. And that's our stick.
I try to be a rabbinically based Jew. I ask myself, what did Chazal do? So it appears twice, the story of a potential convert coming to Hillel to convert. It says, convert me on this false notion, whether it's that I could be the high priest or not accepting the oral law or learning Torah while standing on one foot. What did Hillel do? Hillel didn't think that, if I convert an insincere convert, he's going to in some way back up the Geula. Nonsense. He converted him immediately, miyad, it says, and then he taught him Torah. Why? Because we even have this principle in halakha that someone's not liable for something that they don't know exists. In other words, even when Israel said Naaseh v'nishma, they were only liable for the commandments they accepted or knew about at that point in time. When more mitzvot were revealed to them, more truth, then they became liable for those. So to say that we have to be very careful because this person may not be keeping Torah to its ideal estate just because he either doesn't know about it or is not properly convinced of it, I don't think it's a good argument. But this is a discussion I have with many rabbis, and it seems that it's time for them to break out of this mold, well, that's not rabbinic, by the way, because for it to be rabbinic, it has to be based on the Mishnah, on the Gemara. This is all stuff that we adopted post-Kabbalah, in my opinion. But pre-Kabbalah, I have no problem assuming that Chazal, the Tanaim, the Amoraim, even the Gaonim, behaved more like evangelical Christians today, lahavdil, like not in terms of idolatry, but in the way that they welcome others in, than Jews behave today.
Again, if I had the power, maybe I would be able to. We're trying to influence with what we can, however we can, and try to help to help those people who want to come into the fold, who want to just find a way to marry someone like them. It could be they don't want to do conversion. If they do, they're welcome. Again, we never told them don't do it. We're not going around saying that if you do it, I don't know what. But we want them at least, let's say, for example, Mr. So-and-so to marry a nice lady who also believes like him without idolatry, and the children married to, you know what I mean? It is a little problem. I don't think, for me, we should happen to just be a little person in this world. I'm able to change things. But Bezat Hashem, we're trying to change the mind of...
That one person could really make a big difference, especially in the Jewish world. There's a lot of problems to be addressed. But my issue with Hasidut in general, you know what? There are beautiful ideas in Breslov. There's also beautiful ideas in Chabad. But I always try to instruct my students to make a distinction, to always be careful what they call Torah, what they say is objective. In other words, my problem is, say, this is Judaism, this is what Torah teaches, quoting Lekutei Moharan or even the Tanya, when instead of saying, no, but this is really on the level of Agadah, it could be helpful. In some cases, it could be bad for someone to adhere to it.
But look, one thing about Rabbi Nachman that said that I think is very important as a foundation, and to me has been a bit of shocking to most that most people don't know this, is that Rabbi Nachman said it. Halacha, you must. He's nuts about halacha. So to say, I don't know, to say that maybe Likutei Moharan or anything else is higher than the ways of Hashem, I don't think any rabbi that I learned with from Breslov will say that. They wouldn't. But the way I see it, it does complement Judaism without contradiction. But we're not going around making up our own stuff because we like better Likutei Moharan for some crazy reason. It's never going to happen.
You would call it Torah. That's the thing. When you would say Torah says, and then quote, Rabbi Nissan or Rabbi Nachman.
But you should go to Torah Rabbi Nachman. Yes, I said that. But it's the Torah Rabbi Nachman.
Right. I mean, Torah in terms of instructions. But I always try to get people to make a distinction between.
Again, it's not Look, again, since it's not contradicting halacha, and let's say, for example, mitzvah gedolah lihiyot b'simcha tamid. The greatest commandment is to always be happy. It's found on. This is actually found on Deuteronomy, where it says, if you don't serve me with joy, and because you didn't serve me with joy, Psalm 100, serve Hashem with gladness. To serve Hashem with joy is a very important thing. It's one of the highest things. Even you as a parent, and myself as a parent.
No, I don't disagree with that statement. There's a lot of things in many books I don't disagree with. There are some statements in the Quran that are great, but mainly because they come from Torah. However, I'm not going to say Torah teaches and quote the Quran. And this is what many groups do to in some way get their work, their literary work, penned with the pen of divine inspiration, saying, this is Torah. Well, they may call it Torah Sheba'al Peh or an extension to Torah Sheba'al Peh, but it confuses people. I mean, Torah is really Torah Shebiktav and Halacha, the rulings of the Sanhedrin. But nowadays, you have a Lubavitcher where they'll say the Torah says, and they'll quote the Tanya. And it really makes more dissenters than brings people in. Because a lot of these people, once they realize that, there is a hierarchy in Judaism, and only because Rabbi Nachman or his student penned a great work doesn't really allow it to be called Torah. It could be philosophy.
Look, as long, again, going back to this idea, I don't see any contradiction. Again, we say that there's 70 ways to Torah. So there's many ways you can see Torah. There is synagogues that I've gone to that are very solemn. There are synagogues that are very loud. There are synagogues who like to sing certain tunes. And those people who go there is because that's their shtick. That's what their neshama needs. If you don't, let's say, if you don't subscribe to Rabbi Nachman, nobody's going to tell you, so to speak, you're going to hell. Nobody's going to say that. This is the iyun. This is what you need for your neshama. Again, I don't speak for all Breslov. I don't speak for.
Yeah, that's a subjective statement in itself. That's the thing. I think it would sound better if you said, I think this is good. However, you may not think it's good, and that's fine. But if you, in some way, not accept it, you're not trampling on Torah. In other words, do you consider the works of Rav Nachman Torah, mamash? But
look. I have a friend who doesn't like that statement I mentioned a few seconds ago. Mitzvah gedolah lihiyot b'simcha tamid. The greatest mitzvah is to always be happy. I have this friend of mine, a very educated rabbi, who doesn't like that statement. But then again, he's not going to go around crying around because he doesn't want to be happy, or I don't know. I'm not going to tell him, oh, you're doing it wrong. First, who am I to say that? And second of all, that's what his neshama is requiring. Then good for him. I'm happy for him. Again, because we're living our lives by halacha, by Torah law. Then we're not going to go around saying, or we're not going to say, if you don't serve Hashem with joy, like Rabbi Nachman said, that you're not. No. Again, I got friends who are very boring, and I don't understand them. I don't get them. I'm from Latin America, like yourself. I hug around people. A lot of these people in Toronto, they're not huggers. I hug them anyway. But if they don't hug me, I don't feel offended. Again, each person needs their own light, and as they're looking for the purpose of creation, as they're looking to connect to Hashem, they will find their own light.
The reason I brought this up is more to explain my philosophy. I don't want people to think that I teach that all these teachings on the Geulah or even Kabbalah are bad. I don't teach that. And I don't even teach that the Zohar in itself is bad. But that people should make a distinction. People should know what Torah Shebiktav is and what Torah Shebapeh is. And all this could either help, and in many cases I think it helps, but it could also hurt. In other words, there's many people who have dropped Judaism because of a statement in the Tanya or because of an argument made by a modern-day rabbi who many teach that even the words of the Gedolim today that were also given in Har Sinai. In other words, they dropped Judaism for reasons that have nothing to do with Judaism. Judaism is just the 5 books of Moses and the Mishnah and the commentaries to the Mishnah, what appears in the Gemara. But people don't teach that. So this is why I think when Breslov teaches how to find purpose in life and in creation, unless it's being directly quoted from the Chumash itself, they should let people know this is just our opinion. It could work.
Okay. My rabbis, Baruch Hashem, they always would tell you, this is rabbinical Torah and this is written Torah. That to them, and they express it very well. That's including Rabbi Michael Skobach, Rav Dror, you name it, that I can think of. Baruch Hashem, I got good teachers. They will tell you this is Torah law, this is written law, this is the teachings. They will make a clear lie. They're not going to say that rabbinical law is a Torah law. They will never, in my experience and my teachers, they will never do that. That to them will be the way I see it, I never asked them this question. To them, it will be a sin to mix them and make them one and the other the same.
It's definitely a sin. Lo tosef alav lo tigram imenu. But yeah. I mean, even lo tasur tells you what you can stray from the right or to the left to, and it's like the Beis Din of that time, not people nowadays. I'm just laying down that I don't want you to think that I'm a hater. Many people think that I just attack Kabbalah and say that it's bad. I mean, not for you, but more for the people listening, right? I mean, there's a lot of great things in Breslov, more in their approach in spreading Judaism. But is there anything in terms of what I teach that you have a problem with?
Well, no, I'm not going around there. I'm not going to.
I think it's healthy to go back and forth.
I can tell you more about my work that I'm doing because it's very neat, very interesting situation, and that's why we had the plan to talk about. We haven't really touched it on the purpose of creation, and that. But obviously we got there. We got where we are right now. I don't look. My one thing I don't understand. I'm not saying about you. I'm just saying about some people is that they don't want to have joy to serve Hashem. And that to me is baffling. I like to be simcha. I like to play music loud when I can. I'm not an anach, but I like that. Maybe because I'm from Latin America, we play everything loud.
I think Rav Nachman says to dance when you're feeling down. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? We say it in English. Fake until you make it. Dance as if nobody's watching. You know, it's even a secular saying that we have. We have to have simcha, and I think a lot of times when we daven, if I'm not mistaken, Ovadia, the prophet Ovadia, got a lot of his prophecy through simcha, through the writings of the Chazal. I read that. So we have to have simcha. You know, being a father, like I said to you before, and you have a child that asks you for ice cream. If the child come and ask you crying and demanding because you owe it to the kid, you're probably not going to give it to him. But if the kid comes and gives you a kiss and tells you how great you are and he makes you laugh, you're probably going to buy him the ice cream. So, you know what I mean? So I think to myself, in Baruch Hashem, having a good male role model when I was a kid. I had my grandfather. I didn't have a father present. That I have an amazing grandfather. I see that you get more out of laughing at life and davening to Hashem, connecting to Hashem, but with simcha than with sucking lemons, you know. And that's one thing I would like everyone in the world to do, to be simcha, to be happy, because it's conducive. It's actually healthy. Happened to be a weight trainer for 20 some years. I know that when you're simcha, your body works better. Just even if even if it's nonsense that you're being simcha with, your body will heal better. But when you're miserable, uh, the word I think in agrio means like you're sour. That's when you get sick automatically. You hold defense system and your body will shut down because you're angry and you're sour. So the whole idea to work with Hashem, with what Hashem gave us, looking at the good points in your life, looking at the good points in what you got. How many times, and this is a question for you and also for me, how many times we had things that seemed to be bad ended up to be the best things to happen in our life?
Yeah, constantly.
So
I'm all for that philosophy.
Yeah, and that's what I'm focusing. That's what I'm focusing all the time.
But the only difference is that I believe that it's hard to achieve true happiness, long-lasting happiness, without the ethics and principles that appear in Torah. But these principles include aligning yourself with the Jewish people, who are supposed to be God's right hand on earth. I mean, they're God's ambassadors to humanity.
And that's one thing that is between my eyes, is to be a light to the nations. That's the job of the Jewish people, not to have a country club where everybody by membership only. Is Baruch Hashem, the internet came about, and we get to become a light to the nations without any borders.
I agree, but that light, I believe, is Torah, full Torah.
Of course, I agree with you. I'm not saying no. I agree with you. We teach Torah. We teach.
I mean, full Torah. The Taryag mitzvot, not the Sheva mitzvot by themselves. But anyways, I think that we have enough here to fill a good portion on Facebook and on YouTube. And I think it was educational. Can you give people your website and how to contact you anywhere they are in the world for more leadership?
If you go to esemuna.com, es.emuna with an h.com, they can go there. That's the Spanish website for Emuna, the Emuna group. And you can contact me at Yochanan, Yochanan, at emuna.com. And they can speak to me, and Bezat Hashem, I can help them. Again, my experiences in Judaism in other countries is very little. In Canada, it's very open. So if I'm able to help you, Baruch Hashem, and most definitely, Emuna.com is willing to help everybody to seek Hashem, to connect with Hashem, to know Hashem. And again, we are trying to be a light to the nations. That's what the Jewish people are called. That's what we're trying to do, Bezat Hashem.
Bezat Hashem. Okay, well, I appreciate your message, and I appreciate what you do.
Thank you. Senti, listen, I appreciate your work. I've been following you for many, many years, and I see you changing here, changing there, working with Hashem. So it's a privilege to meet you, to finally speak to you. And Bezat Hashem, we can join together, work together to help people to know Hashem. Bezat Hashem.
Amazing. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and again, it's a pleasure to speak to you and to everybody over here. Thank you. All too.